So anxiety is something that everybody goes through, adults, kids, children, in everyday life, at school, at work, going on vacation, travel. It's something that everybody experiences. Basically, it's that feeling of tension, that feeling of worry, that feeling of, do I have enough money? Do I have enough of this? Am I prepared? Can I do it? Can't I do it? And this certainly applies to situations at school as well. So today we're going to talk about anxiety, a little bit about what it is, define it, how we deal with it, how students deal with it, how families deal with it, and kind of go from there. So good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Mark. How are you doing today?
Good to see you.
You
so
too.
to kind of dive right into this, when we look at students, when we look at children, when we look at youth, teenagers, one of the biggest things is what is considered normal and what is considered too much or concerning. So when parents are at home with their kids and they're dealing with everyday life, when is it a situation where they're like, hey, you know what? This is a little bit out of control. This is a little bit too much.
Well, Mike, the key thing with anxiety and with most types of behaviors, everything is normal. Everyone in the world gets worried. Everyone in the world has anxiety. Life is filled with things that go on that cause us to be anxious. So it is a normal response to be anxious. The only time it really starts becoming a problem or starts becoming of concern is when it starts happening with either a frequency or an intensity that starts to interfere with the child's life. That's when it becomes a problem, and that's when parents need to start taking notice. It's stepped into a level above and beyond that of normalcy.
Right. So it's something that's abnormal. It's beyond the normal amounts that you and I feel or students feel. But maybe what are some things they should be looking for? Like what would be the signs? Like if a parent's home with their child and they're going through these things every weekend and they're like, what is like some specific things maybe they should be looking for?
Well, often when children have anxiety, it manifests itself in either situations with school or sometimes even in the external environment. With school, typically it's with a child saying that they don't feel well. They've got a headache. They've got a stomach ache. Those are typical symptoms. Sometimes it's even, I've got a sore throat. And sometimes it's just a complete refusal to go to school. When it's outside of school, it's usually when there's something that's involving an activity where they're going to be people. It might even be something like going to a birthday party. It could be going to the mall or to the movies. It could be something fun like even going to the fair. When children start becoming reluctant to not only not go to school, but to go to activities that are meant to be enjoyable, then you're starting to get an indication that maybe there's a problem.
So it's in some cases it's anxiety. In some cases it's almost social anxiety, where it's a situation where it's causing them to be anxious.
Correct.
And what we kind of just answered that in terms of it could be a social situation, but typically what triggers this in a child? What triggers these anxious feelings, these anxious moments for a student or a child?
Well, usually, and we're speaking generally, it's either what we call chemically based or situationally based.
Mm-hmm.
Chemically based is where there are chemicals that pass through the brain in everyone and every person. And when you don't have the right amounts going through and you're missing certain chemicals, that can cause the anxiety. And again, that's what we call chemically based. Situationally based is something like being more involving a death in the family, parents are fighting, there might be a divorce, something's happened to the dog, worrying about something might be happening with my parents, which is separation anxiety, what might happen at school. Sometimes it's what we call generalized anxiety. Am I going to be asked a question in front of all the class and maybe I won't know the answer? Or even if I do know the answer, somebody's going to make fun of the way I say it. And so these are the types of anxiety. It's chemically based or situationally based.
Great. And I know one of the big concerns with parents and with family members is, so they have anxiety. What does that mean? And where does it go? How does it affect friendships? How does it affect family relationships? And as they continue to grow older and become an adult, how does it manifest? How is this going to eventually affect their everyday life?
Well, it affects their lives in that they are not going to go to school and therefore they are missing out on school. Or even if they're in the classroom, sometimes these children are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, and it's not the ADD or the attention deficit that's causing the problem. It's the anxiety. Because if you're anxious about whatever it is, you're unable to stay focused. So it manifests itself in in that way in the school. Not going to parties. Obviously, these are times where classmates bond and connect with each other. And the next day after the weekend, they come into school and talk about what happened. And the child with anxiety who didn't go is excluded, is not connecting or bonding. So you see it that way. As they get older, it starts affecting relationships, friendships, marriages, jobs, and starts to impact everything that's going on in their life.
Absolutely. And I would think too, as you develop these habits, develop these skills when you're in school, if you don't develop the right skills when you're an adult, it's a major issue. And it could be anxiety, we mentioned, with families, with friends, but also, in the workplace and being able to succeed at your job. If you don't have the skills to deal with anxious situations or your feelings of anxiety, you're going to have major problems in work. And we all have anxious moments. We all have those times where we feel anxiety going in to make a presentation at work or going on a trip and it's just day-to-day life. But if you don't develop those skills to deal with everyday life situations, you're going to have a tough time.
Sure. And then the person with anxiety who grows up with anxiety does become shortchanged because they might be considerably adept at one aspect of their job, but are not able to convey to the customers, the potential clients, to their bosses, what it is that they want to do and how they want to do it. So they're not able to do it in a way that demonstrates how good they are, how proficient they are at their job, and therefore they land up losing out to someone who is not as adept as they are. So it affects that way. And again, meeting people in social circles just to enjoy yourself or to connect with potential business relationships, not having these skills does impact them. And even if they have the intelligence, even if they have the ability to perform a job or to do something, or they've got a great sense of humor, all of this gets lost in the shuffle because the anxiety supersedes everything else. And as you said, it is difficult. The older you get, the more difficult it is to deal with it. It's just like with anything. We talk about learning languages and how it's much easier for a child to learn language. We know as adults, it's much more difficult to change or to make changes than when you're a child. So the time to start dealing with this and helping the child is in their early years, or as soon as you're able to, as soon as you become aware that there is anxiety.
Absolutely. And I know at our school, one of the things we talk about, one of the goals that every family has for every child, and I think every individual in life has these same two goals. You want to be happy in your life and you want to be independent, including financially independent.
Absolutely.
And if someone has extreme anxiety or is always anxious, it makes those two goals extremely difficult to accomplish.
Correct. And it does, as you said, it impacts the whole family because parents see that the child's anxious the whole time. It is anxiety provoking to the parent. They become worried. How's my child going to make friends? How's my child going to become successful down the road? And moms and dads come from different vantage points or perspectives, but to both of them, it's frustrating because they are seeing their child struggle and they try everything and anything under the sun. And very often it can become counterproductive to the child being successful.
Absolutely. So we've talked about what anxiety is. We've talked about signs to look for, and we've talked about how it manifests and so forth. And I think the $1 million question that people want to know is, okay, so my child has anxiety. What do I do? And so I guess the next thing is maybe what are a tip or two if for a parent, for their child in terms of school situations or home situations, what's something that you can do to help a child who has anxiety that is more than the normal amount?
Well, the first thing is to seek guidance, seek help from a qualified professional to assess or to ascertain what the actual problem is. As I said, going to a psychologist would probably be a good step because the psychologist could help assess whether or not this is situational, which might involve therapy, or whether or not it's chemically based, which might involve medication and could then refer to a psychiatrist. It might involve a combination of the two, and sometimes it might involve neither. The real key to help a child is to make sure for anxiety that there is as much structure and consistency in their life as possible. Predictability is probably the key word.
Right. So they know what's coming, and that schedule helps them.
Exactly.
Right.
So, for example, at school, if the child knows that this is where my desks are going to be, this is who I'm going to sit next to, this is the schedule of what goes on every day, this is what happens in class, then that helps them tremendously. With the outside environment with home. It could be telling a child that we're going to go to the fair today. This is the time we're going to leave. This is what we're going to do when we're there. These are the expectations. This is what time we're coming back. The more structure, the more predictability you can give them, the better it is. That helps settle them and gives them some kind of idea of what they're going to be going through. In terms of what parents can do and to be more specific in this, again, it depends on where the anxiety is stemming from or why it's happening. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of examples that possibly could be a reason and what to do with it. Very often when children are anxious, it is because they are worried about their parents. And coming to school, they want the support of knowing my dad or my mom are okay. Usually it's the mom. And that if something's wrong or there's a problem, that they'll be there for me, they'll be there to get me. I'm not going to be left alone in this. I'm not going to be left to suffer, or just that nothing's going to happen to my mom. And or whatever the case might be, or wherever they're anxious, a good thing to do would be to coordinate with the guidance counselor at the school, that when a child is initially starting the school year or even a new school, to allow the child to be able to contact mom on her phone or mom contact the school at very specific times during the day. So let's just say to start off with, it would be 4 times a day at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it is. This way, the child knows that I am going to be speaking to my mom at that very specific time and is not going to spend the entire day worrying about it because they know what to expect and when it's going to happen. And then after the child starts to establish a relationship with the school and identifies when I'm going to be talking to my mom, they can then go and make it 3 times a day, and then go down to twice a day, and then to once a day, and then to eventually whenever the child feels that they do need to call their parent. Because this is going to give the child the structure, the consistency, the predictability, and obviously it calms everything down. So now you've got a situation where the child's not going to be worrying about their mother the whole day because they know what to expect and when it's going to happen. So there's just one example of what to do with school. As far as home is concerned, you might have a situation where a parent is going out of town on a business trip and the child's going to be worrying. Where's my dad going to be? Am I going to see him? Am I going to talk to him? Is he going to be there for me? And it's a very similar kind of situation. What you can do, first of all, if dad's going away for several days, get a calendar. And on the calendar, in pencil, mark an X through all the days that dad will not be there. And at the end of each day, go over the X with a different color Sharpie so that the child can see exactly how many days have passed and how many more days until I see my dad. And the same concept with calling. If dad says we're going to talk every night at 6:30, the child is not going to spend the entire day worrying about when I'm going to speak to my dad because he or she knows that it's at 6:30. They can get on with their day. They can enjoy their day. 6:30 is when I get to speak to my dad. And it might be 6:30 at night and the next morning at 7 o'clock until dad comes back. So there are many, many different ways. These are just 2 examples.
And plus, with the anxiety can come some other behaviors that go with that. Because they're anxious, they may be more irritable. They may talk back to mom more because they're not sure when they're going to talk to their dad. But to have that schedule in place, maybe some of those other things besides the anxiety that they're seeing, whether it be the disrespectful behavior, the irritability, whatever it is, that may go away as well because the anxiety is being controlled.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is the key. The structure, the predictability brings about a sense of calmness. And with that, it does filter through into every aspect of the daily functioning of not just the child, but the siblings, the entire family's life. So these are a couple of tips, but the bottom line is there are many, many, many things you can do. And the more structure and the more consistency there is, the better life's going to be for everyone. And as we discussed earlier, as the child grows up, learning how to inject structure and predictability into their own lives, so too will their lives become better. Because there are times where the anxiety, whether it be through medication or through therapy, will eventually go, or it might be something that's going to be there for the rest of their lives. But if they've got the ability to structure and organize their lives in a manner that they know what to expect, the more they can do it, the better life that they're going to have.
So the ability to manage it so they can be as happy as possible and to live as independently as possible.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Gary. That was awesome, and we appreciate all that helpful information and those tips. Anxiety is something we all deal with in everyday life. We deal with anxiety. Staff deals with anxiety. We all do, and it's about learning how to manage it, learning how to utilize a schedule or utilize different techniques to help you manage everyday anxiety, but to realize that it's something that can be helped, that everyone goes through, that you can deal with it. There are ways to deal with it to make your life happier and to live more independently. So we look forward to talking to you next time about self-esteem.